Hey everyone, what's going on? It's Justin here from Collegian Gaming. I wanted to do a real quick video here in regards to something that came out a couple weeks ago. We have some projects that we're working on right now, but since this just popped, I kind of want to discuss this real quick and do a real quick video. And that is Warlord Games Epic ACW. So for those who aren't familiar, Warlord Games just announced and has finished their pre-orders now. Actually, the pre-orders are still going on for American Civil War in epic scale. Now, Warlord Games already has an ACW game. They use the black powder rules, and right now they have it in 28mm. They use Perry miniatures, I believe, is what's on their site, and they have this great rule set for black powder that covers any time frame that would have used black powder weapons. And then within that, they then have specific supplements for time period. So for the American Civil War, they have a book out there called Glory Hallelujah that specifically kind of tweaks the main black powder rule book to that time frame during the American Civil War with some minor rules changes and that kind of stuff. Right now they do it in 28mm. My personal opinion is 28mm is a little bit rough to play the grand scale, any type of rank and file Napoleonic type situation game system, in my opinion. It can get a little bit big, a little bit clunky, a little bit clumsy on the table. And I think, if I remember correctly, even in the black powder rules, they discuss that a 6x4 table is minimum. You really should be playing on a much bigger table for that type of scale. So I'm aware of the rules. I've read through them a little bit, and the black powder rules are very good. It just didn't work for what they do. As a Civil War reenactor now for 27 years, probably about 24 of those have been active, severely active. The rest were kind of scattered. The Civil War has always caught my attention. Way back when I first discussed how I got into gaming, Johnny Reb was how I got into gaming. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, something like that now, was using the 1/72 scale IMAX plastic figures, learning Johnny Reb and playing that game system. So the American Civil War has always held a special place in my heart, and I've always loved it at the grand scale. We have figures for Eric and I, and a couple others have figures for Little Wars TV. Guys put out a rule set called Altar of Freedom. That is great for grand scale tactics. I believe the rule book is for 6mm. We play it in 10mm just because the models are a little easier to get a hold of. Old Glory has some great stuff out, and we use that for it. So we play that in 10mm, and it's great for doing the entire Battle of Shiloh in a 4 to 6 hour period. And so it's grand scale. It's not really obviously one-for-one figure per person in a regiment or battalion during the Civil War, but it gets you a little bit closer than a 28mm game would. So right before Christmas time, around Christmas time, Warlord Games announced that they're going to do Epic ACW. Now, for any historical or any veteran gamers out there, right away when you hear Epic, you start to think 10mm, 6mm scale, Warhammer 40K Epic, or Epic Grand Scale is very small, 10mm. So what they did is they actually released their own line at 13.5mm. So I don't know how I felt about that at first, because they're basically scale locking their models. So you can't go out and buy what you already have. I can't use all my 15mm ACW that are sitting in a box somewhere in here. I can't use them because it's not the right scale. So they kind of scale locked on that, which was a little rough when I found out they were going to do that. So they announced it end of December. The release is going to be late February is what they're hoping to get that out on. And so what they did was grab my stuff here. So in this month's issue of Wargames Illustrated, in January's issue, they put out a really cool article dealing with the Epic ACW, and it's reversed there, but you can see they put in a free sprue of the models. So of course I had to jump out and buy it so I could see what these are all about. I'm going to show you guys these real quick here, and then get to the bread and butter of why I'm even posting this video. So in the catalog, the magazine, you got one sprue, and I'll kind of zoom in here in a second, one sprue of their new 13.5 ACW Epic guys. Now the cool thing with this is, being at that scale, they're not all separate. So let me kind of zoom in on one here and see if I can get a good image for you, if I can get the camera to auto zoom and not on my face. See, it was working for me earlier, now it doesn't want to work for me because I got this going. But they come in a sprue with 10 guys shoulder to shoulder. And I really wish, of course, now I can't get my camera to zoom in. You can kind of see right there. So they are actually very well detailed for plastic, for the size of them. To be honest, I was hoping they would not be as detailed for the simple fact of ease of painting. But they are actually pretty decently detailed. Now what you do is, there's 10 guys in a row, and they give you 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of those. So what that is that equals a regiment for them. There's 20 guys to a base, 2 rows deep, and 5 bases to form what they consider to be a regiment in this game. So in the initial magazine, they give you basically a full regiment. You get 1 artillery piece, and then you actually get a commander. Your commanders are mounted. 1 mount equals a command stand. And then the cool thing is they also do throw in the bases. And you can see they have these slots here actually on the infantry bases. They actually have the little pegs that you can pop those in to align them pretty easily. So for the $9 magazine, you get a full regiment of these models to take a look at and see what's going on with them. So first impression, again, the detail is very good for that size. I'm really kind of surprised at that. The models look good. One of the things that I noticed is, it seems from what I can find on their site, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here, so these are sold, you can get the starter set, that's like $120, gives you 12 regiments, 12 mounted commanders, 12 mounted artillery for each side, Union and Confederate, so 24 regiments total. You also get the Black Powder rulebook, and if you pre-ordered, you would have gotten a Meade and Lee miniature with it as well. And then it comes with some dice and some other things like that. And then what they did is, because again, black powder is 28mm, they have a little supplement that they're providing that converts the 28mm stuff to 13.5mm or 15mm stuff, just so you can kind of get the measuring down and any tweaks that they need to do to the rules for the new scale. You get that all on the starter set. From there, they're selling what they call regiment box sets for both the North and the South. They're $32 right now on pre-order. In those boxes, you get 3 regiments, 3 artillery pieces, and 3 mounted commanders. So that basically comes out to 3 of these sprues, 3 mounted commanders, and 3 artillery, which are already on these sprues. So you're getting basically 3 of these sprues and 3 of the base sprues. That should cover a regiment. For $32, which kind of may sound rough when you go, oh, you're getting 3 of these sprues, but they equal it out to a regiment is 100 guys. So 100 guys in a regiment, 300, total for the 3 regiments is pretty good for $32. That they're all on a strip. Excuse me, they're all on a strip. You can paint them up and be pretty good with them. That seems like a pretty good deal. Now, right now, that is the only boxes that they have out there. Obviously, they may expand. This is their first release of it, so who knows if they're going to come out with more. But that's pretty cool. Now, one of the things I've heard some people say already is 5 bases for a regiment seems still too a little large and clunky on the table. They think that three bases would equal a battalion or a regiment pretty good. Which then you can spread these out even more, but you're not going to get as many commanders, so you'd have to figure that out. Obviously, I haven't gotten to play test it yet, so I don't know. 5 bases may equal a regiment pretty well. One of the things that, from what I can tell now, and if I'm wrong, someone please prove me wrong, these sprues are universal. So what you have on this sprue And I'm going to try to get some close-up pictures that I'm going to throw up in here since I can't seem to zoom in on these. But what you get on the sprue is universal for both the Union and the Confederate. Now, again, as a reenactor for 27 years, I don't know how I feel about that as far as historical accuracy of uniforms. But again, it's a game. It's 13.5. I get it. I can hear the yelling already. But most of these guys are either wearing, you know, there are some keppies in there, and then they have some brimmed hats mix in and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, it's not going to be, you know, you want to do an Iron Brigade, you're going to have to deal with some guys with keppies. If you want to, you know, do Zouaves, well, then you're really out of luck right now until if they ever decide to do them. But they're universal. The pros to that, obviously, are if you're buying a starter box at 12 per side, regiments per side, and you decide that you want to paint them all up as Union, well, now you have 24 regiments, which should last you forever. Again, I don't know what the size of what they're going to count for the scenarios are, but that should get you through. So, buying the 3 regiments. Now it's funny because on the site they have Union and Confederate, and again, if they're the same models, the only real difference that I see is obviously the packaging. I don't know if they provide the flags for these. So on this command stand, and let's see if it actually zooms in a little bit there, you can see right there is the flag bearer with just a straight pole. I don't know if they're going to provide the decals for these. There's some companies out there that make really cool already paper flags for 15 mil. They should look okay. At 13.5, they're going to look okay. So I don't know if the box sets come with it as a difference as well. One of the cool things is, and don't mind me while I flip through here, one of the cool things they did in the magazine and the article for it is at the top of it, they actually threw in some laminated flags that you could really cut out and put on there if you wanted to. So now they gave you all Union flag, Northern flags by the look of it, but you can make them work. But so I don't know if the box sets are going to come with that stuff, or if you're just going to add on, or whatever it may be. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I wanted to get this out as soon as possible. I'm filming on the 11th of January right now, so hopefully I can get done what I want to get done before this gets released, which is in the Wargames Illustrated magazine. Again, they did a really cool article on the sprues. They also did a really quick down and dirty painting guide on how to paint these up. One of the cool things that they did with it is they said outright that they used Games Workshop Citadel or contrast paints to paint them up, and they gave you a painting guide for both Confederate and Union. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to follow this painting guide, which I'll get up in here. Obviously I can't see what we're looking at, but you can see there's a painting guide in there. I'm going to follow step by step on this painting guide. I consider my painting to be mid to high tabletop quality. I am not a pro by any means on most of my stuff because I want to get it painted. I want it to look good, but I want to get it on the table and play it right away. So my goal with these is, because of how many you're going to have to paint up, is to do a real quick speed painting following their step-by-step guide to see how they look. And what I'm going to do in this video is tack on those video clips of the process of step-by-step of how they say to prime them, what they use for contrast paints at each step, and give them a real quick down and dirty to see how they paint up. And then post that obviously on the tail end of this video as hopefully you're still watching. So you can kind of get an idea of what they look like. I'd like to get the regiment done before the release date. I'm probably not going to worry about the commander and the artillery, but I want to get the regiment painted up. So yeah, I just wanted to throw this up really quick because, again, I love the American Civil War. I like a game that is going to get me as close as possible. I don't know if Steve's going to watch this, but Steve in our gaming group always talks about how he'd love to play an ACW game that would be a 1-for-1 scale for bodies, which is insanely impossible. But any game that gets me close is pretty good. Now, again, 100 guys, we did the math, 100 guys in a regiment, usually you would have a battalion of 3 regiment, or a regiment of 3 battalions, and each battalion would approximately have 100 men. Now, granted, that was the beginning of the war. won't get into the whole history here, but basically the North had a real hard time getting those numbers back, and then they ended up consolidating battalions and changing numbers and all that kind of stuff. But really, you should have 300 bodies to a regiment. So not exactly, but a 1 for 3 isn't too bad. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I interrupt myself to bring you myself. I wanted to quick interject. As I was editing everything, I realized that the numbers that you just heard were incorrect. I have no clue where I got those numbers from while I was talking. I talked without having notes in front of me, and as I was editing, I realized, those aren't correct. And several times throughout the video, I've referenced that I'm a Civil War reenactor. And I know there's a lot of reenactors out there that do it because they like playing cowboys and Indians, and I won't get into that whole thing. But I reenact because I like to educate the public and portray what the standard American Civil War soldier went through at that time. So I pride myself on being a little more historically accurate and trying to educate and put out good information. So I could not let it stand that I spewed those nonsense numbers just a second ago. So I decided to interrupt myself here and correct myself, because I can be an idiot sometimes. So in a standard regiment, there would have been 1,000 soldiers. A company, which would have been your lowest form, would have had 100 soldiers in it. And then a regiment would have 10 companies when it was originally formed, so giving you 1,000 soldiers. So you have a battalion. A battalion could be 4 to 8 companies, which is basically half of a regiment, usually 2 battalions per regiment. So yeah, I'm going to have to interrupt myself again with another interruption. So this game at 1,000 miniatures representing a regiment is a 1 for 10 scale, not a 1 for 3, which still is not horrible. You could probably zoom in on a battlefield if you really wanted to and throw down 8 to 10 of these regiments and call them companies. And like we portray the 93rd Pennsylvania was mustered out of Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. I could play on a 6x4 10 of these regiments, use them as companies for the 93rd, and just portray the 93rd actions during, say, Gettysburg. We were just offshoot of Little Round Top, and do something like that. Don't know if I would do that because that would look kind of weird just saying that they're each companies, but again, it'd be something cool. So I'm going to let you get back to watching me, but for all of you who quick paused the video and were starting to type a comment about how I was wrong, you can sleep well tonight knowing that I corrected it, that a regiment would have 1,000 bodies in it, not 100, or whatever I just spewed, 300. And yeah, that's that. I just wanted to correct myself, so I'll let you get back to watching how I actually painted these guys. So I'm really excited to see what we can do as far as some grand scale, some epic ACW moving forward with this. So one of the other things I said about the starter set, they have a bigger starter set that you can buy on their websites, like $237.60. That gives you 15 regiments for each side. That gets you the Black Powder rule book. That gets you the little supplement to play this. It gets you a whole bunch of terrain, including, of course, the famous barn, Gettysburg, all that stuff. And it also gives you the Glory Hallelujah book, which is a $38 supplement in itself. So for $237, that's a pretty good deal. That is what I have pre-ordered. Again, as soon as it comes in, I'll probably do an unboxing video of that as well. Probably a little more professional than me just sitting in my attic with the camera, hopefully. But again, this was real quick. I wanted to get this up and try not to ramble too much, which I've already done enough. So we're going to get to showing you actually how these get painted up and what they look like once they're complete. So hope you guys stick around to that part. Alright, so I got all these primed up here. I use the Zenithal priming method. So what I did was I painted them in black. Primed them in black initially. Went over them with a light gray and then a 90-degree on top with some white just to give them a little bit of that highlight. I'm curious to see how they turn out because unfortunately my white was a little splotchy, so I'm going to be curious to see if it comes out alright. I kind of covered it up alright, so it looks good. I didn't want to go too many layers because obviously being at 13.5, I didn't want to lose any detail in the guys. So that's a real quick priming on them. These are the actual bases that they're going to go on. I just glued one strip on so I could use the base to hold, and then I had some bases that I just glued them on just for a little bit easier hold. I was going to put them on wine corks, but I find that it's a little bit easier with these with my gorilla fingers to be able to hold them. So that is the priming stage done. We are going to go with the first layer of contrast on them next. Alright, so steps 2 and 3 are sloppily done. What I did was do the base coats of the blue for the uniforms and went over with flesh. From here they look good. I'll pick up a couple stands and show you what I did here. So you see how well I can zoom in on these bad boys. Give me a second. Alright, so they actually don't look horrible via the camera. Thankfully that's all you guys can see. The reason why I'm kind of bashing myself is so with the zenithal priming I did, it's not a method that I use that often, and I didn't have the greatest of paints or primers, so the gray went on kind of thick in some spots, which is going to make it really hard. I did lose some detail, but we'll see what I can pick up here in the end. So what I did here is again, following the book as best as I can based off of my methods. I did the pants and jacket in the Citadel paints, contrast paints, using the Talisar blue, and I went over that, basically the pants and the jacket and the hats with that. Once that dried, I took Talisar blue and I mixed it with a little bit of Black Templar, which is just basically a black contrast paint, so it's the same consistency, and I went over the jacket and the hats again to give them that darker blue. It turned out good on some of the models. You can really see a difference there. Some of them where the gray didn't really hit with the primer too much and the pants were too black still, you can't see that big of a difference. See if I can get these guys to zoom in. These actually look pretty decent. Of course it doesn't want to actually zoom in on these. So some of them it didn't show that well. So I do have a plan for that. I'm basically going to be taking the a little bit of the Talisar blue with a little bit of white, excuse me, and kind of highlight the pants a little bit so they stand out. So on camera they actually look pretty decent, and in person they look okay too. So yeah, Talisar blue with the Black Templar contrast paints to darken up the jackets and the hats, and then I just took a simple flesh and went through and did their faces and obviously their hands. So that's going to be step 2 and 3. My next plan is, because the uniforms are pretty well done, next plan is to go through and do the belts and all of that stuff. They said they use pretty much for the weapons and strapping a Cryptic Armor Shade Gloss, which again is another contrast paint. It's kind of like a darkish brown type color, which is this stuff right here. So they use that for all the belts and the weapons. I'm kind of almost half tempted to maybe try something different, because technically all the black leather, or all the leathers would be black, and the weapon would be brown, and then you can sort of see like the banding on the weapons, and I thought of kind of getting really crazy and actually doing a gunmetal and silver. I don't know if I'm going to, again, get that crazy. I want to try to stick to their method here and see how they go. Same thing like with the belts. You can actually sort of see breastplates on these guys and belt buckles, which would have been a brass. So I may go back through and touch that up. But I think the next thing is going to be, I'm going to take this this brown, this cryptic armor shade, and go over the weapons a little bit, or go over it as it says, and see how that looks. And then from there, if I need to go further, I will. I'll probably do that step next, and then bring them back and show you guys what they look like. The nice thing is, although these are there's 100 guys here, they're almost done. You see there's blanket rolls on them. Again, they use the same armor shade. Blankets really, I don't know if I want to do technically as a gray blanket. Would have been the US issue. I don't know. Again, I don't think I'm going to get that finicky. Same thing with, looks like they have some haversacks, and I think those are supposed to be tin cups. If so, they're very large tin cups. But again, they're using the armor shade for all of that. I'm probably just going to paint them up that way just to be done with them. Get that on, and then we will go to the detailing of probably the belt buckles, breastplates, and actual facial hair. So that is that. Again, they actually don't look too bad on camera, so I will go through and get some little more detailed pictures of them and kind of post up in between here, and then we'll get back and show you the next phases here. So the next step of these is done. I took the brown, which is the Cryptek Armor Shade Gloss, which is a shade, so not really a contrast paint, and I went over all of the brown belts, all that stuff. Let me flip to the back so not as much shadow. There we go. So all of the accoutrements, weapon, that kind of stuff is done. Again, I don't know how I feel about the blanket rolls being in brown, but again, it's quick and easy, so it works. The only thing I will say with putting it on was, because it is a shade and not a contrast, when I went over everything with the Talisar blue for the contrast, and you put the shade over it, there's some spots where the Talisar comes through a little bit. You can see some splotches. I went twice over with the shade. It kind of covered up most of them. Again, it's not super noticeable at this scale, but I could technically do the right thing and would have gone back once I put the Talisar on, the contrast, and gone through and done all of the accoutrements in like a white primer type again, painted it all on, so when I put the shade on, it showed a little better. Again, not wasting that much time on them. I didn't do that. Honestly, they look pretty okay for that purpose. So I'm gonna go back through and take a look. Again, luckily the guys that are on a bigger base here are all going to be the rear rank, so I spent more time on the back of these than the front. The front look okay, but I spent more time on the back because that's what you're going to see more of. But that's the shade on all the accoutrements. Next, I'm going to do the highlight on the pants and do all of the hair and facial hair and all of that. After that, it should just be going through and touching up the spots that I missed in their boots, which are going to be, or their brogans, which will be straight black. Shouldn't be an issue there. So that part's done. Let's see if I can keep trucking and actually meet my timeline of the end of January of these being up. Alright, and the finished product. So able to get all 5 bases done. Did not do the flags. Probably do that a little bit later. Alright, but there they are. So, since the last time, I ended up doing all of the facial hair on them. Don't you love my handy camera work? Horrible at it. So, they got good beards on them now, facial hair. I kind of miss doing modern military where you didn't have as much beards and goatees and all that crazy stuff. But that is all done on them. There we go. So I did the touch-ups. I did the facial hair. I did the brogans in just a straight black. And then I did the pants. I took a little bit of pallid witch flesh, which is a layer, mixed it with the Talisar blue, just to lighten up the pants a little bit, so you could see an actual visible contrast between the two. And got that all done. So, and then I did a quick basing on them, nothing too fancy, but it suits the purpose. So, speaking of purpose, what was the purpose of this video? I promise it was not to show off my bad painting skills. I do that enough everywhere else. It was to talk about these models and what I think of them as far as a line goes. So, this as a sprue, as a regiment, it's 100 models total count, 20 per base. The detail on them is amazing. For what I lost on them, they still look good for detail. Detail's good. The plastic is good. I mean, obviously, them being in a sprue together or in a line together, shoulder to shoulder, already put together like that as one base. You paint up to two, you glue them down, it's done. I think it's awesome. I wish I would have kept track of how much time I actually spent on these. From start to finish, it's been a little under a month, but I honestly did not spend as much time on them as I should have to get them done a lot quicker. You know, I spent more time letting washes dry and get distracted by other shiny stuff on my table. All in all, I mean, maybe a week or two if I'd hammer them to get them done. So for that, for 100 guys, is not bad. Again, I've yet to see how much you're actually going to need in an actual game to scale it up to see time-wise it's going to take to build a whole army. But I think once you get the painting technique down, I mean, I did a regiment like this. You know, you could throw down 2-3 regiments at a time and just hammer out the same detail to them and be done with them. I don't think it'd take that much time. So I'm definitely curious to see what this game has in store. I'm hoping once I get my orders in of all my stuff, that I will be able to do a big unboxing of all of that and go through that as well and see if my suspicions are true that it's the same models for both North and South, which I'm 99.9% it is. But again, at that scale, not a big deal. I don't think it matters too much, and you're going to see them that much. They're pretty generic, so they work both North and South. I may take some time next time and actually do the brass on them, do some different colors on the blanket rolls, maybe actually do the accoutrements in more of a leather color, black leather. But again, the purpose of this video was to kind of do a real quick review, follow the guidelines for the painting in the catalog, the magazine. I think for a beginner, for an experienced painter, you could do a little bit more detail. I think for a beginner, it's really easy. The fact that I used 4 paints, don't mind the battle droids in the background, four paints, which one of them was just basically a black, so not a big deal there. So 3 paints really, and then flesh and some standard brown, red, yellow for facial hair. To knock them out that quick, I think that's pretty awesome and pretty simple. So that was the whole point of this video. I hope you guys stuck around to the end. I hope you like what you saw. Again, it was nothing more than just to kind of talk about these miniatures and get this video up posted before the stuff actually hits stores, which I'm sure there's already some stuff on YouTube by now about these guys, since I'm slow to the draw as usual. But that is my 2 cents on the Warlord Games Epic ACW figure line that has just come out. So stay tuned for in the future for when I do a big unboxing of everything else and talk about that. Alright all, hope you enjoyed. Take care.